Okay.
Okay, everybody, as promised, we have our special guest Sterling MacPherson here to talk about his experience. Sterling has been to the school before. It's a little bit different, right?
Yeah, a little
Than last time.
Yeah.
Sterling has a wealth of information. He was on camera in that fight there. He can talk about that, but also just what Sterling does, what he did to get to where he did, what it took to become a middleweight, professional middleweight boxer, what's happening these days, etc. So I'm going to turn it over to Sterling. Let's give him a round of applause for being here.
Well, I don't know what you really want me to talk about, Ed.
You want to start talking about that fight?
Yeah, we can talk about that. That particular fight is one of the gentlemen down here asked me a question about that fight. Was I there? This actually happened because when Tyson bit Holyfield on the ear, Mike Tyson called me. Well, they were having problems. They went through the state athletic commission. You probably saw all of that nonsense, and they decided to bar him. And actually, I was at a Laker game that next week. I think it was the next week. And Tyson called me on the phone and he said, listen, I got a lot of headaches. I don't know what to do now. I got problems with Don and on and on and on. And I said, well, listen, I'm getting ready to walk into a Laker game. And he says, hell with the Lakers. You got to come and see me. I said, when they start that slide, there ain't nobody gonna interrupt them. They're gonna hit rock bottom, and he pretty much did. He pretty much did. So I put in didn't actually after that I can't recall, but he fought a couple other fights that weren't with me. He went overseas. I think he went to Copenhagen. He fought over there. Fought a couple of different fights after that. And then I put together a world tour for him. I put together when they start that slide, there ain't Oh, that was
They're gonna hit rock bottom, and he pretty much did.
So
He pretty much
anyway,
did. So,
we put together
I put it on, didn't actually.
a world tour for him,
after
an
that-
exhibition tour, which was going to be very fruitful for him. And the first exhibition was scheduled actually for Ohio, where Tyson actually had a home in Ohio. When he got out of prison, he had to do his community service work in Ohio. So to pay back Ohio, we went to do one of the first exhibition in Youngstown, Ohio. And we did it there. He actually sold 7,500 tickets in less than 2 hours.
Wow.
For a 4-round exhibition. It was a real exciting night. And after that, we were actually scheduled to go to Japan. We were scheduled to go to Japan, and that was in October when he fought that exhibition. Then November, he was going to be off, and then December we were going to fight New Year's in Japan. And Tyson got picked up with some girl down in Phoenix, Arizona. And I don't know if you guys have ever been to Phoenix, Arizona or not, but if you do, be careful. There's a chief of police down there who's a nut.
Sheriff.
That's sheriff. That's exactly right.
And
That's him. And I got a phone call about 1 o'clock in the morning. And I went to see Tyson, and I went to see this guy, and he said to me, he says, I said, well, how do I bail him out? You know, what's the deal? He said, he ain't going nowhere. He wanted badly to put Tyson in that pink uniform, and he did. He got him in that. He got a picture of Tyson in that uniform. He got that. That thing straggled on for a little while, and it killed the tour. And it actually killed Mr. Mandela's dream that Tyson was going to.
Tyson a new car for that, right at that time?
I didn't want to bring that up, Ed. Cost me $400,000.
Whoa.
Yeah, when I signed Tyson actually for that tour, I had actually signed him for $100,000. He said, "This is the cheapest pay I ever got for anything," and I said, "Hey, listen, you'll buy a lot of soup with that, you know." But it wasn't long after that he had come to me and he said, "Listen, you know, I got an idea." I says, "Oh boy, what kind of idea?" He says, "Listen," he says, "I want to give you the $100,000 back." I said, well, "That's great." I said, "Now you finally realize I'm really a helper, huh?" He said, "No, but I want you to buy me a car." I said, "Okay. So what kind of car you want?" He said, "I want to buy this Maybach." I had never heard of a Maybach before. And I said, "What the hell's a Maybach?" And he says, "Oh, it's like a small, short limousine kind of thing." I said, "What the hell do you want with a Maybach? What do you want with that?" And he started telling me reasons why he wanted this car. Pardon? Yeah. So anyway, I picked the phone up and I called a friend of mine over at the Mercedes dealer, and he said, "Greg," I said, "Rex, I want to see if you got any Maybachs down there." He says, "What the hell you want with a Maybach?" I said, "I don't want a Maybach." I said, "Tyson wants one." He said, "What's he want with one?" And I said, "I don't know." I said, "You know, I got to deal with him, and he wants a Maybach." He says, "Geez, oh man, sir," he says, "these things are pretty expensive, you know." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, really. It really is expensive." I said, "Okay." I says, he said, "You need to come down here." He said, "I got 2 of them you can look at." I went down there and I looked at the Maybach, and boy, oh boy, I said, "Geez, okay, it's $360,000 Maybach, this and the other." And you'll never believe this when I tell you this. I'm driving back to my house, and I get a phone call from a guy from Japan. Have you ever heard of Pride?
Yeah, the old UFC.
It was Pride at that time was the #1 mixed martial arts company in the world out of Japan.
Yeah.
A guy named Sakakiba called me on the phone when I was driving back. He says, "Hey, listen, I hear this thing you got with Tyson, this, that, and the other." He says, "I want to buy some of those dates from you." And I said, "Really?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "I want to come to see you and see if we can sit down and make a deal." I said, "Well," I bullshitted him. I said, "Listen, most of those dates are already gone." I said, what are you looking for?" And he says, "Well, you know, how many of them you got?" And I said, "Well, I had 13. I says, I got about 4 of them left." He says, "Well, can you get any more of them?" Well, Richard, I actually had 11 more left. You know what I mean? So he says, "Well, if you can get some more, he says, I'll take them. I said, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to do with Mike with these dates? You know, he says, well, what I'm looking to do, and he explained to me, he wanted to put Tyson on his cards, which would help attract more pay-per-view buys. And so the guy comes to Vegas to meet me. And I said, geez, oh man, he must have got there in like 3 days. He got there in like 3 days. I'm like, geez, how the hell did you get here that quick? He said, no, I was in Los Angeles when I called you. Oh, really? Okay. So he says to me, he says, how many more of these dates can you get? I said, listen, don't worry about it. How many dates you want? He said, oh God, I don't know. How many can you get? I said, let me see if I can get a couple more dates for you. He said, no. I said, I think about 10 more. About 10 more. I said, listen, let me tell you something. I said, so 10 more. I said, those dates are pretty expensive. You know, it's pretty expensive dates. He said, well, what do you want for them? I said, about $2.5 million. He says, can you get 10 more? And I looked at him. I said, when he said that, first thing that came to my mind, that Maybach. I said, somebody's going to pay for the Maybach. That's the first thing that came to my mind. So anyway, I ended up buying him this car. And we ended up doing this deal with this guy. Actually bought 15 of those dates. He actually bought 15 of the dates. Wow. And the last of that story is that, you know, Mike got caught down there with that sheriff, and there was a major problem. And they took his passport. That idiot down there, he took his passport and it killed the tour. And it put me in a real terrible situation, very bad, especially with Mr. Mandela. Mr. Mandela was really counting on Tyson. Him and President Clinton had bought that date for Tyson to fight at Robben Island, where Mr. Mandela was in prison at. That's what this was all about. They had actually sold 2,500 tickets for all the heads of states all over the world for UNICEF. 2,500 heads of state were going to be at the Robben Island, and they were putting it up outside of the prison. And and Tyson couldn't perform. So
What did he do?
well, he picked up a girl, a prostitute, and she had in that car when Tyson was taking her back to the house, she had cocaine in her purse. And when they caught him, boom, 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 and it was a mess. It was a real mess. But my saga with him, you know, we're still good pals. In fact, I'm getting ready to take him to China again. Yeah, pretty soon. But Tyson's been as all of you well know, Tyson's been Tyson, and I've done pretty much that little stint right there. But the positive is that I've probably, I guess, in thinking, I've had over 20 to 25 world champions in my career. As a manager, promoter, I've had over 25 world champions.
Sterling, could you go back to how you grew up and what you did and how you got into boxing?
I'm actually from the state of Ohio. I'm a Buckeye fan.
Oh no!
And yeah, how about that? I'm actually from Ohio, and I was raised in a city called Niles, Ohio. Niles, Ohio. It's a very small city. 25,000 people, 18,000 Italians.
Oh no!
How about that? Yeah, eat a lot of pasta.
Italian American club.
Yeah, how about that?
Any
How
Italian
about
American
that
clubs?
stuff? So, but I actually, didn't. I actually really didn't. You know what? I actually, I was probably a better baseball player than I was a fighter. Let's put it that way. As a young kid, whether it was Pop Warner or what have you, this and the other, I ended up, I had 2 tryouts, one with the Kansas City Royals. Who in here can remember, or old enough to remember, a guy named Freddie Patak?
Oh, I do. Shortstop.
Huh?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Kansas City Royals?
Mhm.
That's
Short guy.
exactly right. Freddie Patak ended up being a real dear friend of mine.
Really? Oh,
Absolutely. I met him in Tampa, Florida. I got a tryout with the Kansas City Royals, And I didn't really quite understand baseball at that time. You know, my dad tried to school me on a lot of different things. He thought I was very good at baseball. I was pretty good. My senior year in baseball, I was an all-state baseball player. I hit 325 on the right hand, and I hit 317 on the left hand. I stole 75 bases my senior year. I was pretty decent baseball player. I got a lot of offers, and I just didn't understand it because I didn't know. No one had ever told me. It sounds stupid, but no one ever told me you got paid in the minors. No one ever said that. No one ever said that to me. And when I just thought if you tried out, you didn't make it, you're done. And that's when I started my boxing career. I didn't quite hammer it, but and actually Patek told me, he said, you should stick around. You can play in the summer times. You can do this, that, and the other. And and as you grow along, somebody will pick you up. And I said, I don't want to give it that shit. I'm going to go make me some money. And little did I know, the first start of I came here. I actually came to Las Vegas. My senior year in high school, about 11 guys, we rented a Winnebago, and we drove from Ohio to California. And we, in our drive over to California, we came to Las Vegas. And at that time, there was a hotel here called the Stardust Hotel. Yeah, and there was a guy named Frank. There was a guy named Frank Rosenthal. He had a talk show there, and we came in there. All of us guys, we drove in here, and we saw. Ironically, we saw Muhammad Ali, and he was on the show that day with Joe Namath, Broadway Joe, and that was it for me. I was like, when I graduate from high school, I'm going to Las Vegas. I'm going to turn. I was an amateur fighter anyway, and so I said, I'm gonna turn professional in Las Vegas. And all my buddies were like, you're out of your mind. They said, you're gonna do it. Well, I did that. I came to Las Vegas, and after my senior year in high school, and I got an apartment down here on Casino Center. It was a studio apartment. Probably from that refrigerator, the white refrigerator, over to here, just a small one. I lived 8 years in that place. I lived 8 years in that place, and I tried to do everything I could do to dedicate myself to boxing. I watched tapes. I studied. I listened to Dr. Martin Luther King. Daily, nightly, what you call it, whatever you want to call it. Everything that my life was put into that small studio.
What was your training like? What did you have to
Oh
do?
boy. From that studio, a funny thing happened. I don't know how many, you ever heard of a guy named Alexis Arguello? Anybody ever heard that name?
Yeah. Alexis
Alexis Arguello was a great fighter, one of the greatest fighters probably that ever lived. One day, my trainer was leaving with Larry Holmes. He was training Larry Holmes, a guy named Eddie Futch. He was leaving with Larry Holmes one day to go. They were going to camp in Pennsylvania, and he asked the gym owner, the guy that actually owned the gym, gym that actually trained him was right here on Charleston, called Johnny Tacos.
Yeah, by Maine and Charleston.
Yeah, so Johnny Tacos.
I was going to ask you if you went there.
That's right. I put 13 years in down.
Still there?
Put 13 years in there. And Taco actually come to me one day, and he said, listen, he says, we got this guy. He's a tall, skinny guy. I want you to go out and box with him. And so we'll go where? He says, Caesar's Palace. We're going to go to Caesar's Palace and box with this guy. So Wednesday afternoon. I said, oh, okay, no problem. So he says, well, you got to be at the gym a little earlier because we're going to drive out. You'll drive with me and go out there. I said, okay, no problem. So he gets me in the car, and I said, well, who are we boxing, Johnny? He said, some tall, skinny guy from one of those islands over there. He's full of shit, this guy. He can't fight a leg. So we get out to Caesar's. Back in those days, they hadn't actually they had it what do you call it, the arena up outside, but we were boxing on the inside. There was a little what the hell they call it, like a pavilion, like a small pavilion, held about 4,500 people. And Jesus Christ, you couldn't find a parking spot on a Wednesday afternoon. And I said, Jesus Christ, what the hell's going on here? Well, all these cars, they got conventions here, they got this and here. So we get inside the pavilion, and these people, when I walk in the pavilion, and the people just erupt. And I said, Jesus Christ, what the hell? How the hell these people know me? He says, don't worry. He says, there's a little secret. He said, I wanted to surprise you. You know, he said, they really know you. I said, listen, Johnny, I'm a guy here. I haven't even turned professional yet. How the hell do they know me? He says, don't worry about it. He says, you're going to be fine. So this guy walks in, real polite, gentleman-like guy, real polite guy, and he's shaking his head and this and that. I says, who's that guy? He says, oh, I says, that's the guy. He says, that's the guy. I said, oh, okay. Next thing I know, these people are going crazy, and I'm thinking to myself, Jesus Christ, that's kind of weird on a Wednesday afternoon for some guy to get this kind of audience on a Wednesday afternoon. It makes no sense. So anyway, we're getting ready to box, and the guy comes over and shakes my hand, real polite guy. And that was the beginning of my career, my life, because Alexis Arguello actually, he just absolutely annihilated me that day. I actually the second or the third round, I come back to the corner and I said to Johnny Taco, and he says, yeah, you're doing this, you're doing that. I said, listen, do me one favor. I said, just shut the fuck up. Don't say another word. Don't talk. Don't say nothing. Don't say nothing. Let's just get through this day. I ended up spending 6 weeks with Aguello in that camp. I ended up spending 6 weeks with him, and me and Aguello got to be really friendly. Actually, if throughout the years, if me and Aguello didn't box 5,000 rounds, we didn't box one. We boxed a lot of rounds, me and Aguello, from all over the place we went. And through that relationship with Aguello, that changed my life with that place. The next day, I did 1,000 sit-ups. I did 1,000 push-ups. And from that day on, every day of my life, I did that. In boxing, 1,000 push-ups, 1,000 sit-ups, 1,000 knee bends, 1,000 this, 1,000. I ran 10 miles a day per day. No secret story. I got tapes of my workouts, and people were stunned that they could see me do those kind of things in a couple hours. And so that was the beginning of me really taking boxing really serious. And becoming a fighter wasn't the easiest task in the world, because there's so many ups and downs that you go through, and you see the anger that you see in Tyson, and the anger that you see in some fighters when they get distraught. It comes from the mistreated guy somewhere along the line. And Eddie Futz was the epitome of a father who just looked after you. And the one thing that he told me, he said, listen, when you walk out that door and you run into somebody on the street, he says, you got to leave that nonsense here and walk out to the street, and you're just a regular guy. You're just a regular guy tomorrow when you walk out that door. And I actually it didn't really dawn on me to really realize what he was actually talking about. It was more of a facet than just one thing than just walking out that door. And it cultivated my mind into thinking about, what am I going to actually do when this thing is actually over with? How does this really going to work?
How did you transition from boxing to promoting?
First of all, when most of us, when we get ready to quit fighting, or we don't really know what we're going to do and what we're going to move into, whatever. Especially, if you made millions of dollars, like Mayweather or Sugar Ray Leonard or something like that, you don't have to think about that. But the majority of us who didn't come to a conclusion that you got to do something. And what are you going to do? What do you know? So one of my friends called me up one day and he said, listen, I want you to work with me. And I said, what do you want me to do? He says, well, you're pretty smart at this. You know how to pick fights. You know how to do this. Because the last part of my career, I did it pretty much on my own. The last 10 fights of my career, I did pretty much all the negotiating and everything on my own. And he said, yeah, I want you to manage me. Well, that guy, I took that guy to Madison Square Garden. I signed him up. I took him, got him like 7 or 8 fights. I think we were together 7 or 8 fights. And I took him to Madison Square Garden. He was a 17-1 underdog. You ever heard of a fighter named, what the hell was his name? He was a partner with Jerry Cooney. Trying to think of it, boy. Anyway, my fighter was a 17-1 dog. And we beat him in the Garden to win the world title, the WBC title. That was the first world champion I ever had. His name was Lonnie Smith. His name was Lightning Lonnie Smith. And he won the world title in Madison Square Garden. And from there on, other fighters started to come to me. And then the big cheese was Michael Dokes. Dokes was actually in jail when I found him, right down here at the detention center.
Wow.
I got a phone call and somebody told me that he was in the detention center. I went and got him out. There was a guy there was a place here called the Golden Glove Gym over here in Northtown. I don't know if you got, pardon?
By Civic Center?
Yes, yeah. And the guy, there was a police officer who actually ran that place. His name was Hal Miller. And I went and when Dokes got out, I got him into the Golden Glove so he could do community service work over there. And when I got Dokes actually out of the detention center and put him over there, he was probably about 250, somewhere in that neighborhood, about 250 pounds, somewhere in that neighborhood. And then I took him to Provo, Utah. He had to go to Provo for what do you call it? It was a drug rehab center. It was a drug rehab center up there. And I took him to Provo, and he actually was going to spend a year there in Provo. And he called me up. It was a graduation day, and he actually called me up and told me, don't come and get him. And I said, well, what's up? What's going on? He says, I'm going to stay another year. I was like, oh, really? Oh, really? He says, yeah. And I got on the phone with his officer, and the guy told me, hey, he wants to hang out, and boom, boom, boom. Really wants to get his life in order. Boom. So he spent another year there. Then Dokes come back down. I actually went and got him. When I went and got him, he come back down. We weighed him at the gym. He weighed 305.
Oh, man.
He weighed 305 pounds. So I got him into the gym, and he was there every day anyway. He had to be. He couldn't drive. They took his driver's license. He couldn't drive. So that actually started the whole thing with me and Dokes. By the way, Dokes is from Akron, Ohio, where LeBron James is from. In fact, LeBron James, I watched LeBron James grow up. He lived about 6 doors from Dokes.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, the transition with Dokes was the actual start of me in boxing with Lonnie Smith and Dokes. And let's see, what was it? That was 86, 87. If you remember in 1980, I think it was 89, Michael Dokes fought Holyfield at Caesar's Palace. It was 88 or 89, somewhere around there. It was the fight of the year. Dokes had actually, I'm sure it was 89, but right around in that period of time. Dokes fought Holyfield there. Then he ended up wrapping up his career. He fought Bo in Madison Square Garden. Riddick Bowe, he fought Bo in the Garden for his last title fight. But through all of that transition there with guys like Dokes and both I had another heavyweight champion. Henry Akawande was too. Henry Akawande, he won the heavyweight championship too, the WBO title. But through all of those guys, that transition to becoming a manager brought me into the promotion stages. And that's how I ended up with doing this with Tyson and Frank Warren. And by the way, me and Don King spent 10 years together. So go ahead.
Wow.
What do you think about Floyd Mayweather, and also do you think he's due for a loss?
Well, Father Time will take care of that if he stays around. Right as of right now, I don't think anybody can beat him. And I've told him this to his face. I don't know why he's moving around and not fighting this guy, but at this point and stage in his career, right now, the smartest thing for him to do is, and people can cry and argue, and if I was representing him, he wouldn't fight Pacquiao. I wouldn't do it. There's no reason in the world for me to do it. He's got a $64 million. He's got a 2-fight contract left with Showtime. It's $32 million a piece. Now, anybody in this room that would go away from that is crazy. Why would you just abandon that? Because the world wants to see him fight Pacquiao in May 2nd. And you got a $64 million contract, and you can fight two guys that don't. You can pick them out of here and fight two guys. I mean, really, think about that. You can pick anybody you want out here and fight him and take those two fights and get $64 million. And then, he's a coward. Well, I'm a coward. And I'm going to get this money because guess what? I can walk out that door and trip over something, and I can never fight again the rest of my life. And how am I going to feed my kids? So the first thing you got to think about is you, not what everybody else thinks. So, but eventually he's going to have to, if he does those two fights, he's going to have to either fight this guy or, it's going to be a painful ending. Trust me.
Was it hard for you to retire at a 17-4-1 with 14 KOs?
Actually, no. Answer is no. But actually, I'm docked 10 fights. I'm docked 8. I'm sorry, 8. I'm docked 8 fights on the what do you call it? Box rec or whatever it is. I had 3 fights in Tijuana, 2 in Kansas City, 2 in Oklahoma. Yeah. Back in the 1980s, if you didn't register, like your trainer or somebody didn't register to fight after the fight, you didn't get credit for it. And to this day, I've been arguing about that for forever, that I didn't get the fights.
Now, you obviously have become successful in promotions and managing everything. What do you think you share with other people that have made the transition? What common trait do you have with other people that have made the transition as successfully as you have?
From a fighter's perspective, I was one of the first to actually do it. De La Hoya, Freddie Roach, and all these other guys, they came later. In fact, Oscar De La Hoya had called me up one day and he said to me, he says, what do you do now? What do you do now? And I said, well, you got a better name than I had. So, it's going to be, but the problem is, how do you make the transition from a fight, and he still didn't listen though. He didn't listen to me. I said, listen, what you got to do is you really got to be a manager. You got to manage a fighter. And it's like you're going to open up a grocery store. Just use that as an example. You're going to open up a grocery store. And in that grocery store, you got to learn all facets of the grocery store. You got to learn how to pack bags. You got to learn how to mop the floor so people don't slip and fall. You got to learn how to stock shelves, cut meat, take bags out to the cars. In every facet, you got to learn the business. You really have to learn the business. And just jumping into being a promoter, others can do it for you, but when you get in trouble, and which he is now, with a lot of legal problems and different things, you got to understand how to really represent fighters in the laws. The laws are the problem with boxing is the laws with the organization, WBC, WBA, IBF, or all these different organizations, and these kids that are represented by grocery store owners. I'll just go back to that, grocery store owners, or people that just have money who wanted a fighter. And, there's thousands and thousands of these kind of guys. And guys sign with them because they give them money. They give kids money. But it's not the smartest thing in the world for a guy to go get a grocery store on because he's going to give you $10,000, because the $10,000 always the majority of the time, that particular fighter, because he's good, it turns into $1 million. And remember, and this is where the problem starts. And I've been through it a thousand times in my life. The fighter that's making $5,000 or $10,000, you don't got no problems with him. because most of the managers don't take that little bit of money from them. They say, you keep that money, don't worry about it. But when it gets into $1 million or $2 million, it starts to graduate. And that's when the headaches start, because the cousin and the sister and the brother and everybody's got advice for the kid now. Why are you paying him $300,000 out of that $1.5 million? Why is he getting that kind of money? Well, that's insane that you could give this guy the money. Now they're in court. The drama starts, and it goes on and on and on. And from the promoter's perspective, like Don's used Don King as an example, I could sit up here and say, he didn't do that. He didn't do it, but he did. He's a thief, and he can't help himself because he wants it all. But in reality, a lot of these guys that have made the kind of money that Tyson's made, or Holyfield's made, or Sugar Ray Leonard's made, they would have never got that money without a guy like Don King. One, if Ray Leonard wasn't with King, he boosted the number up, where Ray Leonard's number went from, say, $2 million or $3 million to $15 million, because there's certain things called purse bids. Like, for instance, you wouldn't notice Roberto Duran, the first time he fought Sugar Ray Leonard in Montreal. There was a purse bid. That fight ended up in a purse bid. And a purse bid is when the number one contender and the champion can't and both camps can't decide on how much money they're both going to get. Like if Mayweather is fighting Pacquiao, the reason why this problem is going on right now, and a lot of these people don't know, the money. What they did was what Aram's done, he's put Pacquiao in the number one position. Right now, Pacquiao is the number one contender. Even though he's that champion in the WBO, he's the number one in another position in the WBC. And that number one spot requires Mayweather to fight him or vacate the title. If you don't want to, you don't really want to you don't want the belt. He wants Mayweather. So if they can't come to a conclusion on how much money each one of them get, because when you do a purse bid, it's normally the champion gets 60, I think it's 60-40 that they can agree on. But there's a lot of other things that go along with that in agreeing to. And if they can't agree on these different things, what happens is you got like a 90-day window, and the WBC comes in and says, you know what? You can't hold the rest of the top 10 up fighting over this case. There's other guys that got to make a living too. Okay, so they say, well, listen, your time limit's up. That's why you're hearing now when they're saying, oh, Pacquiao is saying, well, the timeline, I'm putting the timeline on. He ain't putting the timeline on it. The WBC's putting the timeline on it. And he's enough arguing. Let's go back to doing what we did before we started this argument. And that's how that all starts. But what Don King used to do, him and Bob Arum, with a lot of these guys like Hagler and Leonard, and the reason why they were making $12 and $15 million, because those promoters, they were evil guys. And they would get involved with a fighter. Like when Leonard and Leonard and Duran fought in Montreal, Kathy Duva, the Duvas had Leonard, and Don King had Roberto Duran. So that fight went to a purse bid. And that's why it ended up in Montreal and not in the United States. It wasn't because Ray Leonard fought as an amateur over there. They put up the money, okay, to back the fight. That's what that was all about. So a lot of times these purse bids come along and they boost the number, they skyrocket the number, and most of the time these fighters get ungodly amounts of money, and that's where when you hear that number, that's where that number comes from.
Hey, you said you worked with Don King for 10 years, and with Tyson, man, it seemed like his problem started when he had a rift with Don King. Have you ever thought that maybe Tyson's deal in Indiana was a setup by Don King? Well,
I've heard that a number of different times.
It was right around the time they had their rift.
Yeah, I've heard that a number of different times. Well, he would have had to set up the girl too. You know what I'm saying?
But it almost seems like it.
I mean, he would have had to set it up where the girls getting raped. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that just doesn't make any sense. You know what I'm saying? And there's too much money in Tyson. For instance, to say that, okay, Tyson's getting $30 million a fight. How can you bribe Tyson to throw the fight against Buster Douglas when he's getting $30 million guaranteed the next fight? It makes no sense. It makes no. He just got his ass whooped.
Yeah.
It was just live with the fact. I mean, back in the days with Sonny Liston and all these other guys they weren't making that kind of money. These guys, you're talking, I mean, peanuts. These guys were making. Ali's championship fights were $600,000. Cassius Clay $600,000 for, and that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
That was a lot of money back then. But other than that, why would a guy like Mayweather to throw the fight against makes no sense. He ain't gonna throw the fight against nobody, and it makes no sense.
I think Mayweather kind of waited till now. He knows he can beat Pacquiao. I think in the past he wasn't really sure that he could beat him, but like it seems to me like Pacquiao's on the downslide now, and for Mayweather's legacy, he's not concerned about the money. This is his prime time to fight him because he knows he can beat him now. You know, that's just my opinion on that fight. You know, he waited to the right opportunity. This is the best time to beat him. Maybe in the past, I don't know if he was sure he could beat him, or I don't know. You know,
I don't know. It seems like to me, I don't know. I'm like you. I'm just a fan too.
Yeah.
You know, it seems to me like he's done a terrific job. I don't know if it's by accident. It can't be by accident that he's done what he's been able to do and get that number. I mean, just think about all of the greatest fighters, and we talk about greatest fighters that ever lived. I mean, we're talking Marciano, we're talking Joe Louis, we're talking Muhammad Ali, we're talking, put them all together, they haven't made the kind of money this guy's, all of them. They haven't made that kind of money. Throw them all in the box. And this guy's made that kind of money. And he's strategically done this. I mean, as a bad guy.
yeah.
He's strategically done this as a bad guy, and he's done it. I mean, you got to just throw your hands up and say he didn't need Aram, he didn't need King, he didn't need Duva, he didn't need any, he did it. So, you know, what are you going to do?
Do you think that's going to be the model going forward? More fighters doing more of their own promoting, their own managing, their own, you know, in the way Mayweather does? Do you
Well-
wish you had the intellectual skills you have now when you were fighting to do more? Like I know you said you did it your last 10 fights.
You know, if you're fighting, when you're growing up and you're fighting 2 or 3 fights a year, you can do that. You can pick and choose the 3. If you could if you had the ability to pick the 2 or 3 guys you want for the year, and you can do it like Mayweather. But it takes a long time to graduate to that level to do that. And so you need help getting this done in the world in which boxing is. It's very difficult to do. It's only, I mean, how many guys could do it? Ali didn't do it. I mean, just put it point blank. Ali didn't do it. He just, he was the salesman. He didn't need Aram. He didn't need King. He didn't need anybody. All you had to say was Muhammad Ali's fighting Richard or Bob or Joe, and everybody shows up. I mean, really, I mean, think about that. He didn't have to do, I mean, he didn't need it, but he did. Because he knew that this was the framework. I'll give you an example. Oscar De La Hoya. When De La Hoya actually got in the boxing, he left. Well, before he actually left and retired, he was fighting. He left Bob Arum. He left Arum and he went and got with the guy who owned a company called Televentura. You probably know that. Televentura, Hispanic Network, Televentura. Jerry Parencio. Jerry Parencio is a very wealthy guy. He owns mostly all of the Latin networks. And De La Hoya signed up with Jerry Parencio. Well, when he signed up with Parencio, he was doing 15, 17,000 at the MGM, right, with Bob Arum. The minute he signed up with Parencio, the gates went from 9 to 8 to 7 to 6. There was nobody in the arena. This is Oscar De La Hoya now. Nobody in the arena because Parencio had no idea how to promote a fight. But he had Oscar De La Hoya, but he didn't know how to promote a fight. So people were looking like, Jesus Christ, what the hell's going on here? It's a big fight. I thought it was going to be a big fight. Well, they didn't know how to sell the tickets. So, you know, it's one of those things where you get guys like these Sugar Ray Leonard, and Ray Leonard, another one, needed a promoter. So, you know, it's one of those kind of things. I don't know. And to me, I don't, just me looking at boxing and learning the business and watching guys grow through the business and stuff like that. It's a tough animal. It's a real tough animal. That's why this business is on a continued downslide. it's on a continued downside.
Okay, I don't hate, I was just gonna ask you about that. You know, like right now, I couldn't even tell you who the heavyweight champ was, but back in the day, you know, Ali, Foreman, North. It seems like boxing, man, is just without Mayweather, and unless he's a Mexican boxer, you don't even know about it.
I went to the
anymore.
fight the other night over at the MGM. I hadn't been to a fight in quite some time, and I finally went to see. I wanted to see, and I wanted to get that feel of a real heavyweight championship fight actually taking place, and I wanted to get that feeling in going there. And I went to the fight the other night, and actually ended up sitting with Richard Steele, one former referee, and me, him, and his wife sat together, and we were talking about this, like, you know, what do you feel tonight? What's the feeling? There was no real. There was not a real feeling in the fights that were taking place before the heavyweight fight took place. You know, there was nothing exciting going on, this and the other. And I said, boy, okay, now the title fight's getting ready to happen. The guys are getting ready to come out of the dressing room. And if you remember that moment when George Foreman walked down that aisle, or Joe Frazier or Ali, it was different. It was totally. And I said, and I hit Richard on the arm, and I said, you know what? And hey, listen. I love what they do. I love what they do, and what they do. If they can make it, they make it. It's a free world. But when the rap music started, when the guy come down the aisle, I wanted to run to the bathroom. It killed everything. You know what I'm saying? When Ali used to come out, I seen probably, I think, 8 fights of Muhammad Ali in person. And when Ali used to come out of the dressing room, they came out with a floodlight. There was no music. You never heard music if you ever listen to Muhammad Ali, watch him come down the aisle, go and get tapes. You never heard music. It was a floodlight. They darkened the room, and they put a floodlight on it. And it was about business. It was about nothing but that other guy. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? This here with Justin Bieber and 50 Cent, all these guys, they got nothing to do with this. I mean, it turns into a rap joint. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm just saying, God bless them. They make hundreds of millions of dollars, Jay-Z and all these. But that arena ain't set for that. It just isn't. And that's what's taken away from me, just to me now. That's what's taken away the flavor of boxing. If they took a lot of these little particular things out of it, it would get back to the real business of boxing. That's just my true belief.
Let's have one more question.
How was it working with Francis Botha?
Pardon me?
How was your experience working with Francis Botha?
10 years. I put 10 years in with Botha. You know, today we're best of friends. Me and Botha are best of friends. We were always good friends. Botha had a knack for believing in somebody else. he had a real knack for believing in. He would come to me. You ever hear or your kids or your uncle or somebody come to you and you know this guy's a fraud, and somehow the guy walks in your house with the fraud.
Yeah.
And he don't know it. You know what I'm saying? And you turn your head and you raise this kid, and all of a sudden you turn around and what? Oh no. And you can't convince him. It takes a long time to convince him until this guy robs him of 100,000 or steals his car or something to explain to this guy was a fraud. We can't tell him. That was both. that was both. But Botha was one. Botha was a stud. And most black fighters, heavyweights, whether it was Tyson or Shannon Briggs, you name these different, Lennox Lewis, various different guys come to me. Oh, they thought it was an easy task. And I used to tell him, I said this to Briggs one day at a press conference in Atlantic City. Oh, this is going to be an easy night. I said, let me tell you a little secret. Listen to this. Tomorrow night, we were at the weigh-in the day before. I said, listen, tomorrow night, you're going to wish in hell that they pull both off of you in time. I said, because they're going to beat the shit out of you because you don't have a clue. You think that this big fat white boy is just a big fat white boy, and he's as tough as nails, and he is. He's well. Botha was a methodical guy, a very methodical guy who had most of these guys. Botha had over 300 amateur fights. He was a skilled international fighter, and he wasn't a guy who had serious skills. What he was, even though you looked and you saw him, he looked like he was out of shape. He was in very good condition. He was very well conditioned, but his mind was made up that no matter how much you do, I'm going to do more. And that attitude got him through 6 world championship fights.
Wow.
And he made a lot of money. Botha became one of 5 of the top 5 white heavyweights, richest white heavyweights ever.
Okay, we've got to go. Thank you.
Oh, fine.
Hey, are you still in the business?
Yes. Oh, thank you very much.
That will be the end of our class today. Thank you for joining us. Hey, was I on there?
You on there? You on there?
Okay.